Hi, Alex Smith, your guitar medic, inventor of the Axmax Tremolo, owner of Axmax LLC. I help guitar players breathe new life into their old guitars. In our last video, we discussed the 4 most popular tremolos out on the market. We went through the pros and cons and kind of what you can expect out of each bridge. In this video, I want to discuss some of the hurdles that you're going to have with tension adjustments, staying in tune at the headstock, intonation, string height adjustment, things like that. Set up ideas so that you can get better performance out of your tremolo. So let's kick this off and let's get going with tension adjustments on the tremolos. Okay, we're discussing tension. We have our Bigsby system sitting here, and I would talk about tension with you with this, but basically what you get is what it's going to give you. You have one spring supplied, and that's it. The only way you can really get a different tension out of this is by a different gauge of string, and know that the heavier gauge strings will pull your arm down until it balances out on that tension. The lighter gauge, your arm will ride up a little bit, but there is no way to actually change or adjust the tension on a Bigsby. What you get is what you get. It is reliable, so keep that in mind. You can't adjust tension. Our next one is the Kaler. Now this is a self-contained unit. It has its tension system all self-contained in the back, and you just have 2 springs, and this runs on a cam going through here, and this whole block under here pivots. Okay, so the way you were going to go about adjusting tension on this is there's 2 Allen heads right here, and what that's going to do is if you turn it in or turn it out, what that's going to do is it's going to put more or less pressure on this brass plate, tightening or loosening the springs. So depending on the gauge string you're using, you may need to adjust that. You're going to go tighter to pull the cam back. So let's say we go from 9 gauge to a 10 gauge, and this cam has a tendency to ride up and your arm is kind of flapped forward. You're going to want to go in and equally tighten both of these. What that's going to do is it's going to put a little bit more tension from them springs back on the cam. All your strings are going to go sharp in tonal value, and you're going to have to just relax the strings a little bit at the headstock, and that will relax until you get a balance. So this is a self-contained unit. It's only got 2 springs, and you don't ever really need to change those. It works great with 8, 9, and 10 gauge strings. You just have to know how to adjust, and that's right out the top. It's a very, very compact, simple unit with its own tension system. Okay, talking tension systems here and how to adjust. This is the tension system on the back of my 79 Stratocaster, and it goes for Floyd Rose, Wilkinson, Axmax, and the Fender Vibrato. And what we're looking at right here is the tension plate off the tremolo. You've got 3 springs. You can go 2 to 5 springs depending on what gauge string and how you're utilizing the tension. We've got the claw, which is held in place into the guitar body by these 2 screws. These 2 screws are what's going to give you your forward and backwards tension. And what's really neat about this tension system is you can notice that this is on an angle, and it'll kind of give you a side to side also. So it's probably the most versatile tension system and widely used throughout the market right now. Okay, we've got the Bigsby sitting here, and I just kind of want to talk about tuning issues. Remember, the Bigsby's kind of an add-on, and your strings are going to run over an ABR1 bridge. Now, stock ABR1 bridges, they don't have rollers or anything, so what ends up happening is you use the action of the vibrato, and the strings just sort of lay across, and the wound strings can actually bind up on here. You can kind of hear some pinging once in a while, and that's one of the major flaws of staying in tune that this vibrato has. You can use like graphite or some type of lubrication on your intonation blocks here that will help the strings maintain tune and slide across those. You can actually file them out too so that they're a little bit wider on one side to accommodate the wider strings. Or what you can do, and I would recommend this, get rid of this and go out and get yourself a roller bridge. Now, you might have to do a little bit of modification to your guitar to get this in, and if that's an issue, like if you're dealing with a vintage instrument, then I cannot recommend it. You want to keep that stock. However, if you are willing to try it, these roller bridges are pretty cool because they have a slot in each roller, which keeps the string basically centered on the roller, and it allows for that string to pass right over and back without binding, and it's great for keeping your Bigsby in tune. So that's one of the main issues that you're going to have with a Bigsby is having those old ABR ones with a little bit of flex in here and then binding on the strings. So if you want to avoid that, lube up those pieces with graphite or some type of lip balm like Carmex, or you can spend about 50 bucks, maybe even 60 bucks without including installation, and get yourself a roller bridge and just eliminate the problem altogether. Okay, we're talking about staying in tune, and we've got a Kahler bridge. I have to be honest with you, I have never really had tunability issues on the bridge itself with a Kahler. The way the tension system's set up, and we discussed that just before, being that it's self-contained and runs on a cam, it's kind of an all or nothing deal. You either have the proper amount of tension and it's level and hovering on its cam, or it's set back or it's set forward, but it will stay in tune. The one catch is, now I just purchased this Kahler and it did not come with a locking nut. The locking nuts that do come with Kahlers, or that are available for Kahlers, typically go after the nut, and they bolt with 4 screws onto the headstock. That's kind of your catch. What happens is you've got that nut sitting here, or that locking nut on your headstock, but your strings are still riding through a plastic or a bone nut. What happens there now is you have a catch point. You want to be able to eliminate that catch point, and when you tune up, every time you tune up and restring your guitar, you're going to want to apply some type of lip balm, like the Carmex is what I usually use, into each one of those grooves, and you want to be tuned up while you're doing that so that the nut has the lubrication on the area of the string so that it can flex in there without catching. Once it's locked, that will be your only snag point that will throw you out of tune. Okay, while we've got the Fender here, let's go ahead and look at the Fender Vibrato. Tunability issues with the Fender Vibrato is, again, we're going to have to discuss the headstock. And for the Fender, being that it doesn't have a locking nut at all, Fenders come out with roller bridges and stuff like that to try and accommodate the catch at the nut. They've got roller trees that you can purchase that will allow it to not catch on the trees. But again, I've got a 79 Strat laying here, and I get good performance out of this just by lubing that nut with some Carmex. Another thing while we're here, and this goes with all the bridges, when you go to restring your guitar, you're going to want to make good and sure that these are not, your strings are not overlapping and there's no gaps on the winds. When you wind these up, start at the top and work the winds downward, and then before you tighten up the string, kind of pull up with your fingers and make sure that they seat properly. And then again, lube the nut, and you can get a very good performance out of your Fender Vibrato. The other catch on the Fender Vibrato is dealing with your tension system. Now, I showed you what it looked like in the last section for tension systems. There's a side-to-side variable in there from one screw to the other that I'll discuss. This goes along with the Floyd Rose also. So I'll discuss that separately at the end. I'll show you the Floyd Rose next. Alright, staying in tune, we've got a Floyd Rose. This is probably the bridge throughout history that, gives people headaches, but it really is the one that stays in tune the best. If you take the time, make the effort, and understand how the tension system works and the tricks you need to do at the headstock to make sure that you can really get this thing solid. There's 2 different modes of setting it up: to get it to float, to not have it float, and have a fixed point of origin by hitting the body. This is the tremolo so far that has done the best at staying in tune. We've talked about a lot of different problems at the headstock when it comes to winding strings on here so that there's no gaps, no overlaps, so that you get consistency. I would recommend still doing that with your Floyd Rose. It's going to ride under the string tree. And then you've got a locking nut where you've got 2 strings being clamped at each position on the nut. That basically, once it's locked in place, eliminates any tuning issues that you're going to have on your headstock. That is a great thing for performance and reliability for a guitar player. If you can lock it at the headstock, you take away the variable from the string trees and all the tuning machines. So it eliminates a lot, 6, 7 different issues right there. It eliminates just by locking the strings in place. Also, the tremolo, you have to cut the ball end off and you lock your strings in place on each string saddle. There's going to be no slippage there either. The only problem is it uses this area right in here on each string as its pivot. Okay, you have tension on those strings, and the action of the whammy bar actually kind of pinches, and that's where most guitar players will find are going to break strings. You break a string on a Floyd and you're in a floating position, your whole guitar is out, and that is kind of inherent flaws that this thing has. If you set it up to not float, you'll stay in tune if you bust a string, but note that that's where your string is going to break. It probably won't break at the headstock. The only major issue with understanding how to keep your Floyd Rose and your Fender vibrato in tune, it's a tension trick. And there's ways to go about going after the tension to make these stay in tune properly. And I want to get into that. So the next section here, I want to just discuss the Fender Floyd Rose style tension system and how you can go about adjusting that to get better reliability out of your tremolo. Okay, we're looking at the tension system here again on my 79 Strat. Now remember, I said this goes with the Floyd Rose, the Wilkinson, the Axe-Max, and the Fender Vibrato, and other licensed under bridges that are out there. It's probably the most widely used, and it's probably the one that needs a little bit more explanation just because there are some variables that you're going to want to be aware of. Now, it makes sense to me that if we've got 3 springs, the claw, and everything hooked up, that I do have good tension on the Fender Vibrato here. Now, let's say my Fender Vibrato is kind of sticking up in the air where the strings come through, and it's kind of pointing towards the neck so I can kind of pull up on it. And let's say I don't want to do that. I want to have this be a flush hit, no pull up, just a push down. I'm going to take these 2 screws and I'm going to plunge them farther in, tightening the spring tension, which is going to pull the back half of the trem to the body. Okay, then you'll have a fixed point of origin and you'll get a lot more reliability out of your Fender trem if you don't set it up to pull back. Now, that's a all or nothing kind of a thing. If I go both of them, I'm going to pull the whole system this way, which is going to pull the trem back down. If you find that that Fender is actually slapping the body very hard, you can adjust that by taking both screws out and allowing the tension to release back here, and it won't hit the guitar body so hard. And if you'd like to have it so that you can pull up and wiggle it around a little bit more, you can release that tension a little bit more and keep tightening the strings until you get it to the point where it balances where you'd like it. Now, one of the things that a lot of players kind of either don't know about or sometimes forget to do to get a reliable tunability out of this tension system, and this goes with Floyd Roses too, there's kind of a variable from side to side, and when I say side to side, this screw to this screw, and the spring tension that goes along with it. So what you want to do is tune your guitar up, stretch your strings out on like a new restring, and what you want to do is get your tremolo or get your vintage vibrato set the way you like it. If you want to pull back up on it and have it floating a little bit, that's to the user's discretion. But using the using the 2 screws on the spring setup in combination with each other, set the angle of the bridge that you want, and then retune it. And then what you want to do is just use the bar a little bit and figure out what happens. Now, it's either going to stay in tune, or another thing's going to happen. What's going to happen is something might go sharp, something might go flat. Now that's where I talk about the side to side. So let's say we've adjusted this, we've got the vibrato or Floyd Rose tremolo level to where we want it, but when I use the bar, my low E goes sharp. Well, if your low E goes sharp, it's a tension issue with this side of your tension system, and you're going to want to, if you go sharp, you're going to want to take that screw out and relax that spring a little bit. Same with the treble side or your high E. If something goes sharp or flat, you're going to want to adjust it just on one side. So let's say this one went sharp, my high E, and say my B string went a little bit sharp on me. I'm going to want to release tension here, and you don't want to go a lot. You want to go maybe an eighth or a quarter turn, use the trem or use your vibrato, and then retune it. And just keep making minor adjustments until you get it to balance out. And when I say balance out, I'm not talking about just having your Floyd float or your bridge in a position. You get the balance this way, and you get it from side to side, which will keep all 6 of your strings in tune, whether you have a locking nut or not. So the next time you go and set your guitar up and you have a tremolo, kind of keep this in mind. Okay, this is one of these tricks that I've learned over the years of like swapping bridges out of guitars. I've taken Floyd licensed under tremolos and replaced them with original Floyds. And you know, you got intonation, you got a lot of stuff you got to deal with, and these are some of the tricks that I've learned with this tension system to get better reliability out of that tension system. Okay, intonation on the ABR1 is how you're going to achieve the notes properly on your neck. The Bigsby does not have any intonation adjustments whatsoever. It's an add-on bridge, so there's basically nothing to talk about here. Just know that when you run your strings over and you restring with this on, you're going to want to check your intonation, and that's done with these 6 individual screws for your ABR1 bridge. Intonation on the Kahler, on the other hand, you've got a lot of different variables that you can adjust. And the first one for doing intonation is straightforward and back, and that's just done by loosening up a screw, pushing that block forward or back, and then locking it back down in place. Now you can do this with each one of your 6 strings, and that'll basically set the distance between the roller and the nut on your headstock. And what you're basically doing is setting the note to your 12th fret. You have individual adjustment there, and you have string spacing, which is kind of cool too, and that's just a small Allen head screw there. This is the only bridge that actually has that, so I have to mention it. It's kind of convenient setting intonation with this because the string basically holds the blocks in place, and as long as you have a tuner, you can do this very easily. It's all self-contained. It's a great piece. Intonation on your Fender vibrato, again, is very simple. You have 6 individual saddles that actually your string comes up through the body and the string lays over, and each one of these has spring loaded back here, a screw that goes through and into the intonation block, and you just screw in or out to allow the saddle to move forward or back, setting the notes on your neck and doing intonation. So very simple, very basic. Again, 50s technology that's still very widely utilized today. So very easy bridge to set up, and you'll get good reliability. Brings us to the Floyd Rose bridge. The intonation on this can be quite challenging. As you can see, if we look at the side of this bridge, you have a complete saddle assembly with a bolt coming out the back that allows for your fine tuning, which is pretty cool because you can clamp your string in place and everything, and it gives you that reliability for staying in tune. But let's just picture what happens now. You've got this string sticking in, and it's all locked into place, and this whole assembly is one piece. If I go and loosen this bolt, okay, what's going to happen is it's going to slide forward. And you already have string tension on there, so to pull it back, you actually have to loosen the string, move the block, and then lock it back down, and then tune the string back up. Now, you kind of have to do this a few times if you want to get this intonated properly per string. It's time consuming. It's what I would consider kind of a nightmare. I've done a lot of these, so I kind of found some tricks. You can block the tremolo so that it stays level. Another thing that happens when you're doing this intonation is you lose your tension from this thing flopping forward and going back, and your tremolo kind of rocks on its pivot, which moves your intonation point. So you need to block that off. You can do that underneath with, say, guitar picks or a small piece of wood, but you want to make sure that you get this stable, or you're going to have a nightmare trying to do this. They also make what's called the claw, which goes up against these bolts and rests back here, and then you can just kind of dial it in once it's loose. Again, you're going to have to spend some money to do that. I think they're like 25 or 30 bucks. So if you're going to do this a lot and set up a guitar for a lot of your friends that have Floyd Roses, I would recommend buying that. But know that when you start to break this loose, your string is just going to pop that forward, and you're going to lose your original spot of intonation, which, well, now you're guessing. You don't want to guess with intonation. You have to get it set properly, because if you're playing chords and then you go to play a solo and your intonation's off, halfway up the neck, your notes are going to go sharp and flat, and it's really going to start to sound bad. By the time you get up to the higher register on your neck, you're going to have nothing but troubles. So, very reliable bridge. Intonation can be a complete nightmare. So if you're going to install one of these, know that that is going to maybe be one of the major hurdles that you're going to have to get through to get this to be sounding really good and get it to be reliable. Okay, some of the final things that you're going to want to know about is height adjustment on your bridges or tremolos. I say bridges because, again, the Bigsby does not have a height adjustment. It's all done on the ABR1, which is existing in the guitar. So you'll have two posts. If you're familiar with the Les Paul or ES335 or any of the Gibson setups, that's how you're going to adjust your height. Okay, so Bigsby, again, not a whole lot. It's an effective tremolo or vibrato. It just doesn't have a lot of adjustments. It's just very basic, very simple. The Kahler Trem has quite a bit of adjustment to it. Height adjustment is done by a small Allen head screw here on each one. And one kind of bummer about this bridge is once you start doing your intonation forward and back, it does kind of mess with the height a little bit. Not much, but you want to do your intonation and then go and set each height adjustment separately. An advantage to this also, along with the Fender, is you can set the radius of your strings. So if you want this on a 9.5-inch radius guitar, such as a Fender Stratocaster, it will accommodate that very easily. It'll also go to 12, or you can customize it. Very versatile bridge, very easy to do height adjustment. And you can do it on individual strings, which is just fabulous. So, Fender, vibrato, same situation. You have two small screws on each one of these intonation blocks. Again, it'll go and you can set it to whatever radius you want, any height you want. Again, you've got a 6-point here, so it's going to be basically flush mount to the body. So that is your only height adjustment, and you have to do it string by string. Again, though, the versatility of that is great because you can do different radiuses for different necks. Finally, we come to the Floyd Rose, and the Floyd Rose is a 12-inch radius. That's what you get. That's how it is. So you cannot individually adjust this unless you shim underneath each saddle. So it is possible, but there's shims. Your height adjustment, just for average setup and trying to get better performance and action on your neck, is just done by the two posts that it pivots on. Plain and simple, those are the height adjustments for the 4 vibratos, tremolos that we've been discussing. Well, there we have it. We've discussed the 4 most popular tremolos and vibratos throughout history. We've shared a lot of information. I guess the last thing and how I want to close this is there are certain things that are going to, I don't know, kind of hinder the performance, and I just want to give you a reminder that you should really try to achieve the proper tension. This is one of the major mistakes that the guitar players will make. They kind of want to get playing and they're in kind of a rush. Take your time. Make sure that the tension systems are operating properly. On that same note, you want to make sure that you do not prematurely lock a locking nut in place if you don't have your tremolo balanced out properly. Another thing that's going to really help tone is every time you restring your guitar and restring your tremolo, just double check your intonation. It doesn't take that much time once you have it set, especially if you're using the same gauge strings. It's just one of those things that I do on every setup, and I would really recommend that you do that. It'll just give you better performance, better tone. So thanks for watching. In the next video, I'm going to go and give you some tips on finding and buying the right guitar for you, and basically guitar tremolo packages. So thanks for your time, and we will talk soon.